What is going on, guys, and welcome back to Touchdowns to Home Runs. My name is Bernie. Thank you for joining us today on the Touchdowns to Home Runs show. I hope that your day is going absolutely fantastic. Today, we're going to be taking a look at the Toronto Blue Jays, revolving around the question of, are the Blue Jays done in this year's free agency and this offseason, or are we going to see them make another move come the 2021 MLB season? Now, today, I have four guys that I'm going to be breaking down that I think are probably the most realistic if the Blue Jays do go back into the free agency market. We'll be breaking down those guys, and then at the end of the video, I'll be giving you my prediction on if I think the Blue Jays are actually going to sign any of them. So make sure to stick around. Should be a good one. So the first guy that we're going to be breaking down is James Paxton. Now, obviously, James Paxton is Canadian, so he would be coming back home to Canada in Toronto when the Blue Jays play again at the Rogers Center. But James Paxton would be a fantastic fit for the Blue Jays on paper. This is a guy who would slot right into their number 2 starter, which is exactly what the Blue Jays need. You push down Tanner Roark, Stripling, Robbie Ray down. You slots right behind Ryu. This is a guy who was pretty good at times for the Yankees, definitely showed flashes of being a very solid pitcher when he pitched for the Seattle Mariners over the course of his career. This is a guy who, is a pretty good pitcher in terms of keeping his ERA down, is a really exciting pitcher when you look at his 11 to 11.5 Ks per 9, does walk a few guys, but I mean, when James Paxton pitches and when he is healthy, this is a perfect guy for the Blue Jays to have at the number 2 spot in the rotation. The reason I'm sort of hesitant on the Blue Jays signing James Paxton is, first of all, there's a lot of teams involved in talks for signing starting pitchers, Angels being one of them, teams like the Mets, bunch of other teams as well. So you'd assume that the price for Paxton is not as low as the Toronto Blue Jays would like it to be. Also, the issue is James Paxton has some health concerns. This is a guy who has never really been able to stay healthy over the course of full seasons. So we don't know if the Blue Jays would be able to get a healthy James Paxton. This is a guy who has only pitched over 160 innings once, which was 160 and a third innings in 2018. And the Blue Jays rotation already has a bunch of questions. You're looking at Robbie Ray and Ross Stripling, who are already slotted probably at the 4 and 5 spots of the Blue Jays rotation, and who the Blue Jays are sort of relying on to be able to bounce back this year. You got a guy like Nate Pearson, who, yes, I think is going to do a lot better than he was at the end of last season if Nate Pearson can stay healthy. But this is also a guy who in the minor leagues was never stretched out over a full MLB season. So as I mentioned in past videos, what's he going to be able to do? Is he going to be on an innings watch come August, September, October months, hopefully if the Blue Jays make the postseason? So I think if you're looking for the Blue Jays 2 starter, in my opinion, it has to be a guy who gives you just some solid innings, similar to what a guy like Ryu, even similar to what a guy like Tanner Roark does. A guy who will stay on the field, a guy who will give you innings, and who's going to be that quality 2 starter. James Paxton definitely has the stuff to be the Jays' quality 2 starter, but I think there's a lot of questions if the Blue Jays do end up signing him. Let's move on. Really interesting one here. Over the past couple of days, Blue Jays have been in talks for Yadier Molina. Now, I expect Molina to end up going back to the Cardinals and retiring to the Cardinals. He's getting close to that. I think he's like 37 years old. And I think that this move would be interesting if the Blue Jays do end up really pursuing this. Molina's old, and a lot of people are wondering, why when you have Danny Jansen, Reese McGuire, Kirk, Moreno in the minors, a bunch of catchers as well, other than Moreno in the minors, why they would need Molina. The one thing that I can think of is when you compare Molina to a guy like Danny Jansen, and you look at the guys that the Blue Jays have in the rotation, a guy like Nate Pearson, a guy like Robbie Ray, Ross Stripling, who need to bounce back, and a guy like Steven Matz, who's a big project if he does end up sneaking into that 5 spot of the Blue Jays rotation. Yadier Molina, being a veteran catcher, is much more likely to defensively be able to bring out the most in those 4 starting pitchers. That being said, it also creates a trade scenario for Danny Jansen. A lot of people looking for catchers, especially young guys. Danny Jansen's that. He's improved defensively, a guy who can hit for a bit of power as well at the catching position. Possibly sign Molina, allow your farm system catchers to develop a little bit. Then when Molina retires next year or the year after, you call up one of those catchers, they become the starter, and you get a trade package now for Danny Jansen. Does it make sense when you think of it like that? Probably. In my opinion, it's just a lot of moves that the Toronto Blue Jays would have to make. They would have to shake up a lot of that roster, a bunch in the minors, moving Danny Jansen around. Could it help? Yeah, I think it's a lot of work, and I don't really know how much it's actually going to gain the Blue Jays. Next up, we got Taiwan Walker. Now, Blue Jays know all about Taiwan Walker. He was fantastic for us in the second half of last year. This is a guy who had a 4 ERA in the first part of the year when he pitched for the Mariners, but then a 1.37 ERA in the second half of the year in his 6 starts for Toronto. He was fantastic for the Blue Jays. Is Taiwan Walker a number 2 starter? I don't know. The way he pitched before he came to the Blue Jays, probably not. He's more like a 3 or 4 starter. But the way we saw him pitch in the last part of 2020 definitely looked like a 2 starter. This is a guy who can strike out some people, needs to bring the walk numbers down again, but had a fantastic ERA, and Blue Jays fans already know him. Right? So you go out there, you get a guy potentially like Jake Odorizzi, who we're going to talk about next. Jays fans don't really know him. We saw Taiwan Walker already for 6 starts. Not too old. So a guy who I wouldn't necessarily mind signing for a bit of term, 3-4 years potentially. And I don't know how expensive he's going to go. Again, as I mentioned before, a lot of teams interested in getting a starting pitcher. But I think a lot of the focus is on guys like Trevor Bauer, Paxton, and Odorizzi. So Taiwan Walker might be the oddball out, and the ability for the Jays to go in there and get him for a fairly decent price. And then lastly, we're going to break down Jake Odorizzi. This is a guy who didn't pitch much in 2020, but's been pretty consistent in being able to pitch a fair share of innings over the course of his career between 2014-ish and 2019. He's a guy who had a 3.51 ERA in 2019, but this is a guy who's probably going to give you pushing 30 starts and pushing a high 3 ERA just below 4. He's a quality starter, but the issue I have with Jake Odorizzi is I don't know if he's the 2 starter that the Toronto Blue Jays need. Right? If we go out and we get a free agent starting pitcher, go get a guy like James Paxton, who is a legitimate 2 starter. I don't know if Jake Odorizzi is higher than a 3 starter in the Blue Jays rotation. So for the money that Jake Odorizzi is probably going to go for, I don't know if it's worth it for the Toronto Blue Jays. I would rather go out, instead of spending money in free agency, almost go out, package a guy like Groshans, a guy like Grichuk, maybe a guy like Kirk, Danny Jansen, if they could free him up. Go get a guy like Sonny Gray, because you have the pieces to make a trade, as opposed to going in there and getting a guy who you don't know if could actually be a 2 starter. Because I know, with those guys that the Blue Jays could trade, a guy like Sonny Gray, Castillo, Marco Gonzalez, all would be legitimate 2 starters for the Blue Jays. So I think they definitely have some options. And as I mentioned in previous videos, the trade options definitely still on the table for the Blue Jays. In terms of if I think the Blue Jays are going to get any of these 4 guys. Now, here's the thing. We look at a guy in the signing like Marcus Semien. We signed Simeon for 1 year, $18 million. People were mad that the Blue Jays overpaid for that, although I don't think so. I think Simeon is a fantastic hitter and primed for a bounce-back year in 2021. But again, his term is expiring. Right? We have a lot of guys on this roster that are going to free up money at the end of this year. And what's so great about what the Blue Jays have been developing their system and the direction that they're going is we're in a spot for next offseason to be in the market again for the top free agents. And I know, looking at a guy like James Paxton, even Taiwan Walker, probably Odorizzi as well, are all going to want multi-year deals. And because of the market for starting pitchers is probably going to be more expensive than a lot of us would like. And I'm not saying that the Blue Jays should not go for one of these free agents. I'm just saying be careful. We're in a position where we can make a trade, which makes more sense in my opinion, and then sort of see where we're at this year and then go back into the free agency market next year. That's what I would do. I wouldn't touch any of these free agents unless we could get it for, a fairly good deal with shorter term and cheaper than a lot of people would expect. I expect Taiwan Walker to be the most likely. I don't think we're getting Molina or Paxton or Odorizzi. But again, I think the Blue Jays, the front office is very smart, and I think they will make the right decisions. But let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below. Do you think the Blue Jays will get any of these 4 guys? Do you think they're going to get a different free agent? Or do you think the trade route is the best for the Blue Jays before the 2021 MLB season? If you guys did enjoy today's video, make sure to leave a thumbs up, subscribe to Touchdowns to Home Runs for more content just like this. As always, guys, thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you again next time.